country. This is the Liberty Hour, where these important issues will be discussed for the sake of America's future. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Constitution in the other, here's your host, Sean Thompson.
This is the Liberty Hour podcast. Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 9:05 to 10. Actually, it's 9:05 to 9:50, but if you feel like giving me a call, it's 312-642-5600. We have the same callers as the morning show. That was going to be something that we wanted. It was a sticking point when we decided to do the podcast, when they offered me the podcast, was listen, to me, what makes the show interesting as a caller is the callers. So I always love it when you call. Now, the nice thing is I prefer when you're on topic, but you don't have to be. After all, it's a podcast. And the way that it's going to work is that I actually make money selling real estate both in Illinois and in South Florida. Now, this is my season to sell real estate in South Florida. And I don't just mean because Jelly Belly Pritzker was elected and everyone with an IQ over 60 in Chicago knows that the future economic taxing tsunami that is about to destroy the people of Illinois is on its way, although that is. And I'm going to tell you something right now. I was in the room and we were talking about the absolute horrific tragedy of the two Chicago policemen being hit by the train. And one thing I hate about this kind of scenario isn't just the idea of the destruction of two phenomenal people, which you hope they were and you think they are. It's the destruction to those families. And, you know, each one of them has infants, or one had an infant, the other had 3 kids. And, you know, it's Christmas. And for the rest of their lives, it's destruction and mayhem. And the despicable part that happens, it almost happens immediately. They wake up, really the architect of the ghetto where this police officer was chasing this scoundrel, this lowlife. The architect, the man who embraced the philosophy here in Chicago that creates these sewer neighborhoods. And that is the Democrat socialist. And they get the shortest one they could find. In this case, it was Rahm Emanuel. Coward that he is. Coward that he is. And he goes up there and he seizes the mantle of virtue that we, the public, want to give to these two people and their families. And I have to deal with this fraud, corrupt architect of economic and civic destruction, Rahm Emanuel. And then the police commissioner comes up there. He's an okay guy, I guess. I don't know. I could care less. And they parade, the heroes, and they stand on the shoulders of brave men. And this is like when I watch these guys in Washington stand on the shoulders of soldiers, the cowards who are risen to power by the brave, use and abuse them. Because right after that phone call, Rahm Emanuel got on the phone and said, okay, where's all my connected guys? Where are all their kids? All right, send them to Lincoln Park. All the other morons that don't have any clout, you go in these ghettos that I built, that my party built. And that's the thing to recognize. And I always say that about Chicago. We are the example. We are where these policies go. This is where it leads. And then what happens is you pretend that all these neighborhoods need are more money. And that's what Rahm Emanuel did for his tenure as the mayor of Chicago, right? Made sure that all the funding, all the nonsense, it goes right to these neighborhoods. That's why you want to know a neighborhood to lock your car doors or avoid altogether is a neighborhood with the most government intervention. A neighborhood that is financed the housing, the food, subsidizes the businesses. A neighborhood that is orchestrated by that small, well-intended political class. That's called a ghetto. And that's what Chicago is becoming, all of it. It always had its terrible ghettos. And they decided to spread the ghetto. Which is why now when you're walking in Lincoln Park, you need one of those Bell 1970 motorcycle helmets so you don't get cracked on the head and robbed. So before it happens to the entire country, let's point out exactly what these sewers of corruption, of Democrat socialist corruption really look like. And don't be distracted by the fact that these two heroes, who, by the way, were trying to do the best they could under the circumstances they were given. And those circumstances, who's the giver? That's what I always like to do in these instances. Pan back. Find out what is happening and how you really change things. And if you listen to my rejection of Trumponomics, of Obamonomics, of Bush fraud, TARP bailout, scumbag, corrupt corporatism, it's because that's what I'm rejecting. I have what I like to think is the integrity to separate the man from the policy, right? Some guys I probably wouldn't have liked as human beings love their policies. I don't know who the hell Calvin Coolidge is, right? I know he wore a funny hat, one of those zoot suits. Probably would have thought he was a scumbag. I probably wouldn't have liked him at all. But his policies, phenomenal. Eisenhower, embodies probably like him personally, and you like his policies. Trump, I'm just going to shock you. I probably like him personally. In fact, I know I would. I like him a lot. There's a lot of his character I love. And this is the thing. So can I criticize? I went to the health club. I get in the car. I'm on my way to my other job, and I put Joe Walsh on last night here on AM 560, The Answer. And Joe Walsh is a congressman, for those of you who don't know, who was elected in the Tea Party movement, the swell of the Tea Party. 2010, goes into office. He lost after the first term, but he was speaking hardcore principles of Tea Party and fundamental economics and all of this. And he represented true, absolute, free market conservatism, and that's why he was given a radio show. Because he lost the election, because first of all, you're here in Illinois, which really is a punchline for the rest of the country. And they could just pick a socialist, and they'll redistrict you if they think you have any chance of winning. And that's what happened, and he lost. Keith, I can't get anybody's attention in there. Anyway, so Joe Walsh was given this opportunity, and he comes onto radio from basically nowhere. He was a guy who'd never done radio, and he just espoused his beliefs. And he built a radio station that went into 99 different stations. He's syndicated across America. He's in 99 different stations. And Trump got elected, and during that process, Trump was Joe Walsh's guy. Joe Walsh picked him. And what happened during that next, I found to be astonishing. And that is he started to criticize certain policies. And all of a sudden, he became a never-Trumper. So all of a sudden, he's inundated with calls into the station. He's inundated with emails into the station. How could you criticize our president? How could you do this? And my philosophy started a little differently. I experienced it for myself. And what I experienced then was, if you talk against certain policies, all of a sudden you're disparaging the man, and that was never my intent. I'm so glad that Donald Trump won in the field he was given. In particular, can you imagine if you had one of the Bushes in here again? I don't want that. I don't want the corporatism, the fraud, the nonsense, which is why I reject a lot of the economic policies of collectivism. But what you're seeing now is that the socialist has learned to not just separate and conquer, which is what they were always good at, which is why they implement these Rube Goldberg policies where the mechanism is so complex, it's just a matter of time before it breaks down, and they swoop in to pretend to save it and grow their power, like Obamacare and like so many other things. But what I wanted to focus on is can we get back to the principles that stoke the Tea Party? Can we get back to the principles that really brought us together? What is that? Oh, that's fine. It's not on the actual stream. Oh, all right. All right, very good. Thank you, buddy. Sorry, we had a little technical glitch. That's what we're going to do with the podcast. We're going to have these from time to time. Anyway, I was optimistic during the 8 years of Obama, during the open rejection of Obamonomics by all of us. I thought to myself, once Trump gets in there, I understand he's talking protectionism. He'll shed it because Trump is a learned businessman, and one thing in the business world is you have to get out of what isn't working. You have to adapt and overcome. And so I had some optimism in that aspect. But what I've seen is that when you criticize things we know to be wrong, things like, for instance, the tariffs, and that breeds in a whole other argument. But one of the other things I found shocking was that we accepted the bailout of particular industries. So when he took the taxes, the hidden taxes, and stoked other industries like the American steel, American aluminum, people forgot to do the dimensional thought of how many things that affects. But now you're seeing food now. And just a week and a half ago, We gave $12 billion 4 months ago to farmers, and a week and a half ago, Trump said we're doing it again. So now you're talking big money. This isn't small change. $12.5 billion 4 months ago. They haven't released if it's going to be the exact $12.5 billion this time. And I'm watching Tea Party people embrace this stuff. I find it really disturbing. So I want you to hear the clip. And if you care to participate, it's 312-642-5600. And this is a sticking point Joe was saying. He's getting inundated with these emails because he's criticizing non-conservative policies. And what's happening is if you say to conservatives, we didn't like subsidies when Obama did it. We hated it during TARP. We hated it during bailout. We formed the Tea Party as a reaction to that. And now, when Trump does it, you're telling me it's okay. Means you didn't believe it when it happened 10 years ago. Means that for these 10 years, you really weren't standing on principle. You were standing on popularity. So I want someone to tell me why this is, all of a sudden, this too is conservative.
In this Wisconsin farm, the Slattery family have nearly 300 acres of soybean and corn. Faced with the US government's escalating trade disputes, they're already planning to diversify their crop and could soon be getting a government handout. The Department of Agriculture has announced a $12 billion plan, which includes cash handouts to producers of goods such as soybean, wheat and dairy. They'll also implement a scheme to buy surplus produce that would have been exported were it not for import tariffs from...
So I want you to think about what that guy just said. He's telling you that we're giving out $12.5 billion in cash based on what? See, this is the problem when you have government intervention. It's based on nothing. It's based on who is closest to the politician. It is something that they say is patriotic, right? Let's save the farmers. But when you go to save those farmers, well, how does it work? Do you think the farmers that need the saving get it? Or do you think the farmers that have the most political clout get it? This is the issue. There is no such thing as good conservative government corruption. It's as bad as Chicago mafia Democrat corruption. It's just different participants, the same vehicle. So this payoff in cash and schemes to purchase items that normally wouldn't be bought, you are paying for, and you have no idea exactly how it's implemented. So how can you advocate yourself as conservative, as principled, when this is happening under who you're telling me is the most principled conservative president we've ever had? And what happens is you become part of the cult of personality, and you start defending things you hated, and you start to hate things you loved. And you do realize my outrage is because that is the Bolshevik, that is the Trotskyite, that is the Stalinist Lenin plan. Right there, to surrender your principles to government. Because, and this is what we say all the time, and as you see it, Trump is a stitch in time. Now, let's go to how that plays against us even when Trump is right. So Trump is right in the fact he is the elected president. He has the right to implement certain policies. Now, these particular policies that I speak of, this is Congress's job that they surrendered, but that's a whole other issue. My issue is Democrats see that what's happening is Trump is becoming, the cult is becoming smaller and smaller, and what they're doing now is attacking him on, ironically, something he should not be attacked on. And there's a reason for that. They like what we're letting happen with the seizure and the nationalization of business and the seizure and the nationalization of our economy. So they want to keep that power structure intact, which is why they're not attacking Trump on policies and abuse of government money and a seizure of private property the way I am. They're attacking him on personality the way I would not. And that is, we are losing in two lanes. So we are losing because we have allowed government to nationalize our economy. We are losing because we've allowed government to pick and choose winners that they don't like And what do I mean by that? We went from a Russia investigation of collusion, which, by the way, is a joke on many, many, many levels. The Russian collusion joke is that somehow Donald Trump colluded with Russia to do what exactly? Forget the fact that collusion is not a crime, and it's not. But to do what exactly? To have a social media presence and to inundate with emails voters? And that somehow is something Donald Trump only did? Because are you kidding me with the fact that Facebook, Google, Twitter, Instagram, all owned by Democrat sycophants? Not only do they give their money, they give their infrastructure to the Democrat Party to inundate through email, through social media bombarding socialist propaganda. That's what got Obama elected. He hired the most tech-savvy guy in the world, and they sent fraudulent information about policies that we live now in their failure. Do you remember all the fake and phony nonsense they were sending? She's dead now, but my then 96-year-old grandmother about how great socialized medicine would be for her and how great it would be for her granddaughters and her great-granddaughters. That was not sent by the Republicans. That was not sent by other entities. That was sent by Democrat liars, Democrat infrastructure of corruption in the internet. And all of a sudden that was okay. But now your accusation is Donald Trump had Russians do it. And you can prove nothing. And the fact that you can prove nothing is why you're attacking him on nonsense. On nonsense. So what I like to do, rather than just pick and choose follow these frauds around like it's a polka, and they get to lead the dance, that pencil neck geek Adam Schiff, like he gets to lead the dance. Here, I said his name. Let's hear his soothing voice.
The president has wanted to draw a red line and say, you can't look at my business. But if the president's business is trying to curry favor with the Kremlin, we can't ignore that.
But if your business is to curry favor with your contributors, can we ignore that, Adam, and your entire party, which is the picture of political corruption? And I don't just mean the Chicago Democrats that give the same mafia contracts to the same contributors. I mean nationally. Your whole party is a pay-to-play scheme. But that's okay, huh, Adam, you pencil neck geek? It's outrageous to me that we have lost what exactly the principle of the argument is, and now we're led around by these Svengalis, by these deceivers, by these faux wise men who are, ironically, the political whore. And this is the thing. Now, all of a sudden, we're going to attack Trump on business dealings that he did before he decided to run. Can we go through the business dealings of just the spouses of all the senators and congressmen? Can we do that? Wouldn't you love to do that? And I don't just mean little Dick Durbin and his real handsome wife, and I clean that way up just in case the studio guys are listening, who happens to be a lobbyist just by happenstance. And surprisingly, every one of her clients gets exactly what they want from government. Can we investigate little Dick Durbin's wife's assets? Or how about, what's his name, Creamy Bob, who is Jan Schakowsky's husband, who got caught, by the way, hiring mobs. And not just in Chicago. He did it in Washington, D.C. Can we investigate Jan Schakowsky's husband's finances? Or how about Nancy Pelosi, whose part just seems to be getting bigger and bigger, the drunken stumblebum? Can we investigate her husband's finances? How about Dianne Feinstein? Speaking of Russian collusion, here's a guy that happens to be just a captain of industry in China. Can we investigate theirs? So what we do when we allow this to happen is we don't just take our eye off the ball with the fact that we don't like that, okay, Trump paid off hookers and whores without modesty. I mean, isn't that what Stormy Daniels is? She's a whore without the modesty to stay off camera. Or the Playboy model. Ooh, shocking. So I had an affair, and I bought an agreement called non-disclosure, which, by the way, I thought the whole point of non-disclosure was to not disclose, but okay. So I bought these agreements, and all of a sudden it's illegal. Since 97 to 07, Congress has spent tens of millions keeping just the staffers silent about the congressmen who are molesting them in their offices and propositioning them and sexually harassing them. This is outrageous to me that we, as the citizens, have lost the fact we stand for principles of nothing. And what we're not arguing against is the entire body of corruption, but just who gets to rule it. And this is the one thing I like about Trump. He's going to flip this around. I think, in my opinion, they have played directly into the hands of Trump. They have given him everything he wants. The problem is, what has he done with that power? Is that he has taken us into a direction that pays farmers cash payoffs and buys their products. And that's just what we know about. It's also going to happen on what we don't know about. On the products already purchased. And we as conservatives stand idly by while conservatism, the definition of conservatism, not just changes, but metamorphosizes into socialism, into collectivism, into servitude for us. Can you not see the economy's collapsing, right? Oh, gee, it's a real shocking that this bubble is bursting. And by the way, bursting it is. And it's going to get uglier than 2008. Mark my words. Because you built it up on fraud. You faked it till you made it. Oh, boy, I don't think make this word. And Trump used to criticize that. This was my hope for him. I loved it. Loved it when during Obama he would come out and say, this housing market is a scam. This stock market is a fraud. The unemployment number is a joke. I thought to myself, this is going to be great. This is going to be great. And he gets in, and he just said, look at those same numbers I didn't like last month. I love them today because I'm the president. And here we are 2 years later, an election later, where you're starting to see the beginning of the end, the tip of the iceberg. And as you go beneath the surface of the water, you're going to see this whole GDP, all of it, it all is reliant upon government misappropriation of funds and selective targeting of credit. That's all it is. I mean, I listen to show after show about finance. They pull in people and they say, well, yeah, trade wars are bad, but it's 1% of GDP. What the hell are you talking about? It's 1% of GDP today. As that ripple becomes a tsunami, which is what macroeconomics happens when you change rules or bastardize policies in macroeconomics, the microeconomics destroy us, the real workers, the real people. Because ultimately, we're going to have to pay for this shit. Ultimately, we're going to have to pony up. And as you see, you people in Illinois, what happens? They don't reject the lies and the taxation and the socialism. They don't reject it. They hire their most popular proposals of it. We got J.B. Pritzker in Illinois. We produced Barack Obama. We are the ones who would have elected Rahm Emanuel and will probably elect Bill Daley. It's a cycle, a revolving door of failure and fraud that the people become slaves to, and then all of a sudden hope for change from the same exact policies. So we have all of these examples in front of us. We have all of the principles and fundamentals that we know. And yet, for some reason, I'm trying to figure out what the philosophy is of the American citizen who says, I know that this trade war created and started the Great Depression. I know that Herbert Hoover, who was a national populist way before Trump was born, I know that his policies built Hoovertown, which is the equivalent of mass homeless communities around the world. But this time it'll be different. And I have to say, are you freaking kidding me? And I have Stephen Moore come out. And I was going to have the clip from last week. Why? It doesn't matter. This has been going on for 2 years. Well, you're in the 2 years now where you're going to lose on both fronts. So here's the reality of what's happening. We're losing because we've allowed Democrats to say what they've done for 10 years and have never been prosecuted for is now we can now prosecute Republicans for it in paying off whores. Okay, you've been doing it. Now Trump does it, it's illegal, and you're going to go after him. We've now said that influencing ignorant citizens who are too lazy to look up principles through social media blitz and through inundated with emails, that is somehow collusion. And sure, it got Obama elected and it got Obamacare passed. But now, today, that's illegal, and we get to impeach Trump for something like that. Or we can use that as a crowbar to look into his finances of the potential, of the possibility. And this is the thing when you talk about the inaugural ball. It's the possibility that if you buy or give him money, he may give you favoritism. We have 70 freaking years of that actually happening on every level of government, from your municipal government to the federal government, under everybody who's in office right now, and that's okay. But Trump's idea that he might do it, and you have no evidence that he did do it, that we can impeach him for. So we're losing on two fronts, and the problem is we seem to be going to the wrong corner, in my opinion. To go to the corner of let's accept bad financial fiscal policies in hopes to get the stock market high versus demanding the principles that will benefit all of us economically versus the 50% of Americans in the stock market. But see, why do they need the stock market high? And that's to pay for their phony municipal government pensions and policies like Social Security or Medicare. Which the real joke is, how are these people getting elected is by promising to expand both. Ocasio-Cortez is promising, I asked for a clip here, hold on, promising to expand these Obamacare into Medicare for all. And I have to say, have you lost your mind? That she not only got elected, she's on every station, and Republicans, for the most part, are not denouncing it. Where are the Republicans denouncing it? In most cases, they're simply expanding upon it. Do I have, where is it? Let's see here.
You got a serial liar who takes...
Oh, no, it's Giuliani. All right. So you have an instance where when I say we run to the corner that we shouldn't, we're running to the corner of government. We're running to the corner of government intervention. We're accepting the payoffs to the farmers. We're accepting the promise to fraudulently create a strong GDP through infrastructure spending. Because the reality is, you notice how mum's the word on that because we're talking about this fake government shutdown? Mum's the word on the infrastructure, which Trump wanted more than $1 trillion and the Democrats ate up. Now you're just arguing about the billion or $3.5 billion difference between the wall and the no wall. And everybody's focusing on that. Give them the $5 billion for the wall. How about we stop the $1 trillion for the phony infrastructure? Because what happens is you accept the failure of the fact we've paid for this infrastructure every freaking term. Every president runs on the same nonsense. This is how Bill Clinton really gained power. He was going to spend everything on infrastructure after Bush #1 doubled what we spent on infrastructure. After Reagan doubled what we spent on infrastructure. When is it ever enough for infrastructure to be done and maintained? Because you're paying every gallon of tax or of gas, you're paying taxes to do that. You think we're just building donut connoisseurs in these orange trucks? Is that what we're doing? We're just going to keep. What do these guys have to do? Because they don't have to maintain the roads because every 2 years a politician tells me they haven't. And they're crumbling. And the infrastructure is crumbling. So the problem is they're taking advantage of an economic illiterate society. And they're running us not just in circles. In circles, at least you don't lose ground. They're running us backwards. They're running us to a place of Chicago, Illinois, the ghetto that we first talked about. That's what's coming to a neighborhood near you. Because this only ends in economic failure. It only ends in economic collapse. When you have your fundamentalists preaching protectionism in the cohorts of Kudlow and Stephen Moore, and not just him, it's everybody on Fox Business. I'm watching every host adopt the mantra of protectionism, of government subsidies, of government manipulation over healthcare. You're watching just mimics, parrots of the same thing, Medicare for all. Well, those of us who have had family members, we know exactly where Medicare goes. Medicare is a stone disaster. It's one thing you want to avoid. If older people have money, what's the number one thing they do? They buy all different subsidies, all different supplements, and they avoid Medicare. Medicare produces losers, not winners. It's terrible. And no one addresses the fact that since Obamacare passed in 2009, what happened? What happened in 2009? We lost 25% of doctors, between 25 and 35, depending on where you get your stats, of doctors from practice. Now, what the hell does that mean? Insurance companies that were bountiful, that were plentiful. We had them all over the place. They were building buildings, all this stuff. Now, you could argue why and all that. I get it. But they're gone. All but a handful. The most corrupt of them, that's what survived. The ones that took government handouts, the one that took government intervention. And we've paid for the subsidies to insurance companies. And we rejected that. These are the same philosophy that is now paying subsidies to the farmers. This is my point. The fundamental principle doesn't move. It doesn't wiggle. It is the denominator of principles in your life. You don't surrender them because you sympathize with who's in office. And that's not what we've done. In fact, we're losing. People like me are losing. This radio show, Liberty Hour, the hosts like Joe Walsh in the morning, or in the afternoon, the hosts like the principled guy, they've either had to adapt or they've lost listenership. They've lost support. And it's not because people disagree with them. They just don't like hearing the truth. And it's the noble lie of deception. So the majority of people want to be lied to. The majority of people want to be slaves. That's just the reality of humanity. I argue back and forth. I got a producer in there who's a smart kid. And he keeps arguing evolution to me, right? And I say, well, listen, I didn't crawl out of a monkey's ass. I don't know about you. But he keeps arguing how I'm a flat earther because I don't believe in evolution. And I don't. I kind of believe we're here for a broader purpose than to just evolve into something else. I'm here because I think we are made in God's image, and we are supposed to. This is the test of life. This is the test of character. This is the test of principle. And I keep thinking about, if you're watching this, if you're not in it, but you're watching us devour ourselves, what are your thoughts as you watch us not just devour ourselves through moronic wars and through disagreements, but watch us build ourselves all the way up to America, where you're the land of the free and the home of the brave, and you watch as that devolves, as we deindustrialize, as we decivilize back into the Soviet Union. We have more in common with Venezuela right now than almost anybody, and we keep pretending we're the land of the free, home of the brave. Our so-called conservatives have adopted and changed their definition of what freedom and principles are to where you just want to be led by a guy you like, to where you just want a subsidy to a farmer and you shut your mouth and you say okay, to where you watch these corrupt industries who are owned by Wilbur Ross, these sham steel companies, just pay off politicians and get subsidized. And you say, that's it, make America great again. I mean, it's ridiculous to me. Where you chant, instead of saying, hey, this socialized medicine has destroyed Americans, has destroyed doctors, has destroyed hospitals, it has destroyed everything it's touched. Let's rip it out by the root and throw it in the garbage. No. What we're going to do is we're going to expand it. That's what you've done. And so now all we got to do is get somebody who sympathizes, because the reality is this, Donald Trump's an old man. I mean, you didn't just have to have that meeting in the Oval House that looked like a exercise at some old people's home. All that was missing was an orderly. He's an old man. He's going to be out whether it's 2 years or 6 years. Now what? When those chickens come home to roost, now what? You're going to just stick somebody else in there you love? Who is that? Is that Mitt Romney? Because all of you Trump supporters who hated Mitt Romney, I got news for you. The policies are exactly the same. Mitt Romney's policies that you rejected, they're exactly the same as Donald Trump's. In fact, Donald Trump's may be a little worse. Let me see here. This might be the right one.
Hello, everybody. I'm good, Tim. Good. It's a big day.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. In a few moments, I will sign an executive order launching a new White House opportunity. This is a very big thing that Tim and I and everybody have been working on for a long time.
What is that?
And Revitalization Council. This council will coordinate efforts across the entire federal government to deliver jobs, investment, and growth to the communities that need it the most. With the creation of today's council, the resources of the whole federal government will be leveraged to rebuild low-income and impoverished neighborhoods that have been ignored by Washington in years past.
Have they now?
Our goal is to ensure that America's great new prosperity is broadly shared by all of our citizens. Our country is doing better than ever economically, and we're able to do that. I'm thrilled to announce that our new council will be led by Secretary Ben Carson, who is here with us today. Let's see, Ben. Where is our Ben?
That's 12. This is on the 12th of December. Was this on in the news? This is the Community Reinvestment
For decades,
Act.
job growth and investment have been concentrated in a few major metropolitan areas. This has created a geographic disparity, a very big one in many cases, where some cities have thrived while others have suffered chronic economic and social hardship. With opportunity zones, we're drawing investment into neglected and underserved communities of America so that all Americans, regardless of zip code, have access to the American dream.
That's the Community Reinvestment Act. That's the same thing that built the ghetto in Chicago. That's it. And this is the 12th of December. Where is this on the news? See, because they like this policy. This policy that Donald Trump promoted is exactly the policy Democrats want. This was the reason I rejected the Trumponomic plan. It is exactly the same as the Chicago Democrat plan. It is exactly the same plan. It's the Community Reinvestment Act Part 2. That's what you're about to go through. And so the neighborhoods we know have all government funding. You know what the problem is, ladies and gentlemen? They don't have enough. There's not enough government funding. There's not enough after-school programs. There's not enough. And here's what they don't want you to know, and here's what Chicago proves, and here's what every ghetto on the East Coast and the West Coast and in South America proves. There's never enough because you can't buy character. Can't buy it. Where is the conservative outrage? I had to find this in getting ready for the show, and I was Googling and looking and searching subsidies. This is December 12th of this year. Signed executive order. That's another thing. We hate executive orders, right? We like checks and balances. We like the system of representation. An executive order is exactly the opposite of it. An executive order is something that they implemented during wartime to increase surplus and supplies to government so that the Congress didn't have to vote on each and every little thing. And look at what it's become. You single-handedly, with the signature of a pen, you get to decide we give more money to these failed socialist bastion ghettos in the name of a community, helping community. Is it helping the community? Because the only thing that helps the community is when the character of the people demand and reject this kind of thing. Not that we get more. How many apartment buildings, how many apartment complexes do better when we add Section 8 housing? Anybody want to live in one? Anybody? How many grocery stores do better when we increase food stamps? Because, see, that's a show. That's a lie. That's fake purchases. That's pretending to sell food when you're really not. You're letting people buy things without ever paying for them. They don't give a shit what they buy. They could care less what they buy. And now you've got the entire other problem where the biggest problem in those communities with food stamps is obesity. So now what you've done is you've allowed people to make themselves unhealthy, and now we have the health insurance problem. So what we need there is more government spending. It is a snake eating its tail, pretending it's full. That is what socialism is. The problem is conservatism used to fight it. It now embraces it. So if you learned anything, learn the fact that today, what happened recently is that our conservative president not only pick and choose winners and industries and companies, he's doing neighborhoods now. Now we're doing neighborhoods. This Community Reinvestment Act Part 2 is something Obama would have dreamt we would allow him to do. And you sit back and you sit on your hands and you pretend this is conservative. You can like Donald Trump. I like him. I said before, can you imagine meeting this guy before he's president? He's got planes. He's got girls all over the joint. He loves to throw money around. This is a fun guy. Love to hang around with him. When he went before Congress in 1991, when he started hanging around with Bill Clinton, which this is the other thing. They were dear friends before all of this. He spoke in 1991 of the Community Reinvestment Act. Do yourselves a favor and educate yourselves. For an hour into Congress, he demanded that we spend in neighborhoods, only he wanted all neighborhoods. In fact, what he knew he was creating was the real estate bubble that imploded in 2008. And that was embraced by Republicans and Democrats. The stock market bubble that he's funded, he's demanding low interest rates now to keep it up. This is the same exact freaking thing. You're sticking the fork in the light socket like a Democrat. Think better. Think more. Think about freedom. Think about liberty. This is the Liberty Hour. This is where we think about it. This is where we demand it. This is where we call for it. We'll be back tomorrow, 9:05 a.m. Liberty Hour. I want to thank you very much for listening. Take care.